come back and keep a link with those people. And there's even more places that I want to come back and continue, because sometimes the wave of the project can be read even when the photo is gone. You know, the photo is like paper, it's ephemeral, it goes with the time, but it always stays an image in your head. I'm not trying to change the world, but you know, when I see a smile up there in the favela or down there in Cambodia, in a way I feel like I achieved my goal.
So I'm really delighted to be able to welcome you. As Mark has already alluded to, this conference has been a long time in the planning and was inspired by our work in creating this exhibition, which hopefully, if you haven't seen, you will all have the opportunity to see later. I'm going to start by saying, to me, this conference is all about stories, human stories created from real life experiences of division, of separation, hardship, but hopefully there'll be some joy, inspiration, and maybe even some enlightenment. Stories are important to us at Tully House. We took the approach when creating the Roman Frontier Gallery to move away from conventional museum interpretation. So in this gallery, you will not see a label saying this Roman stone was found in Carlisle in the 3rd century. Instead, you'll read all about Carausius, the military commander, who declared himself Emperor of Britain and who was later erased from history. For a museum, this time-travelling approach is somewhat unconventional, but I'm pleased to say that the response has been hugely positive. It is by far the museum's most popular gallery, but more importantly, we provide the opportunity for the visitor to comment. The ingredients of this project have been prepared for others, so I must thank other members of the design team, some of which are here this evening. Jules Wooding, our former learning manager, Tim Padley, who's going to follow me, our curator of archaeology, Gavin Campbell, who was project manager, Nigel Mills and John Scott from Hadrian's Wall Trust, or Hadrian's Wall Heritage, as it was then. We created what we thought was a memorable and engaging interpretive approach, telling the story of a divided community 2,000 years ago.
This is a photograph of Professor Haverfield excavating at Byrd Oswald, and the photograph is dated 1898. We have to start before Hadrian's Wall. The Flavian Emperor Vespasian had come to the throne in AD 69 after a bloody civil war, defeating 3 other emperors, and he decided that he really wanted to finish the conquest of Britain, and an ad hoc frontier was formed on the narrowest part of Britain, which is from Carlisle to Newcastle. As originally designed, this was not a defensive frontier, this was a border control, because it's 80 Roman miles long, and it had a fortified gate at every mile. And as it was being built, the plan changed. First of all, a fortified gate, that's what I had in mind, little for few troops, collect the taxes, and we know what was going on because Tacitus records in his Germania that in Germany the Tencteri complained that they could only enter the empire if unarmed, were under guard and paid a fee. Does that not sound familiar for people travelling across borders today? But it shows that they want to move troops up to the wall. It still doesn't make it an offensive frontier and a defensive fighting platform, because there are not enough troops really to march all along the wall and defend it. The primary function of frontiers was to control movement into and out of the empire. Exactly how they did it and what they charged you, archaeology cannot tell. Thank you.
There is, of course, a huge similarity between the Roman occupation of Britain and the British and American occupation of Iraq.
And the similarity lies in the fact that in both cases you have a very, very alien power from a very long way away. The greatest moments in this country's history have not been when the Romans built a wall, or when Wallace and Bruce and Edward I created a frontier, or if Alex Salmon creates a border. Our greatest moments have been when we've reached across the border. So the most dangerous point of a border, I would challenge your conference with, is not when it's autonomous, not when it's a military frontier, not when it's a debatable land, not when it's a zone of contact, but when it's treated as an empty space.
As Mark said, the translation into English is Doctors Without Borders, so it fits into the theme of your conference today. Their part of its work is across borders. Often when we are working, we work in contexts where we are invited to work or where we negotiate access, and we work within a community or a population with the explicit approval of the authorities. There are, however, certain circumstances where that access is denied or refused, and so you have to have cross-border operations. Though they're often as a last resort, they're high risk in security. Populations are trapped by a border, by a no man's zone, a no man's land zone. We can't drive anything in, so the only access is by sea. In Zintan we could drive in, but we have to cross a border, a physical border, whereas with Misrata we talk about a sea border. And we're a little organisation with a ferry who we get from Malta and equip as a floating hospital to go in to evacuate patients.
It's a real privilege to be here, and I'm really fascinated by all the contributions this morning. And I guess why I'm here particularly is because I did, way back in the year 2000, I did a thing called the Border Interpretive Centre.
Well, I'm very proud. I'm the director of this new centre about to be opened here. It's a very proud day for me, and I think it's a proud day for the whole country. We're surrounded by the border here. It's an ideal spot, right on the border. There's the border there.
And now it gives me great pleasure and pride to declare the Border Interpretive Centre well and truly open. Thank you very much.
We am from Northern Ireland because all that thing about creating borders does create identities and it's this the idea that the border is introduced to you by your family as almost like facts of life. This idea that my father would take me and say, John, it was my father who gave me the facts about the border. He said, John, I really appreciate my parents' openness about the border. A lot of people would have left it to the school, or worse for them to find out from their friends around the street, which can be really dodgy. I remember my father's exact words. He said, John, the border's only natural. So I don't know, it's almost like people were talking about these things as borders going and what's left behind. Like obviously we have all in Ireland and here we have these ruins of castles. We have a hell of a lot of ruins in Ireland. But it's this idea that we're speculating that these things might be, attractive in years to come. That they'll be in the way that Norman castles or Anglo-Irish castles or whatever they're called, the ruins of are kind of photographed in the landscape as being beautiful and very Irish.
Oral history, I've interviewed 10 competitive sportsmen from the GDR. That means they were able to join the Olympic Games. And I decided to choose memories which could be interesting for you, because I have asked every cyclist about his memories and about his opinion about the two German countries and about the Berlin Wall or about the borders, and was why did the sportsmen cooperate with the political system, which is the element of consent, when was the feeling of ambivalence too strong that they decided to break with the system, what are the experience with the Stasi, and what kind of pressure did the Stasi use. I use 5 keywords to analyze and interpret the interviews, and maybe this could be helpful for you to interpret the memories too. One keyword is consent. I think even in a totalitarian system there must be a small base of consent. So I tried to explain it, and I called it uncooperative or cooperative behavior. When decide the sportsmen to break with the system? When was the ambivalence too strong that they decided I couldn't be a cyclist anymore, I have to break with the system?
I'm delighted to be able to introduce our next speaker, our final speaker, I think, of the day, Professor Peter Stone. Peter's head of the School of Arts and Cultures and Professor of Heritage Studies at the International Centre for Cultural and Heritage Studies at the University of Newcastle. He has published widely on heritage management, interpretation and education.
I tell my students that we study the past to understand the present, to create the future. And that's the value of doing archaeology, I think. My view from my meanderings around the world is that probably this gallery is one of the, if not the most innovative piece of interpretation at any World Heritage Site in the world. You do not, or you should not, I would aspire and suggest, give people information and knowledge necessarily, but you should send them away thinking, talking, and if possible, arguing about what they've just seen. That if you go to many, many World Heritage Sites in the world, they simply don't tell you that they're a World Heritage Site. And the idea was to get children involved in debating about the issues, not just as passive receivers about the right or wrong way of approaching a particular issue. And we also tried to identify to teachers that World Heritage was deployable right across the curriculum. You didn't have to only have World Heritage for World Heritage cultural sites about history, or natural sites about environment or biology or whatever. It could go right across the curriculum, art, language, whatever. It's the same with all of UNESCO's conventions. Experts have got in the way of UNESCO's overarching goal. And my agenda would be to suggest that we experts should get out of the way and allow that connection to be made back to UNESCO's real aim. I want to go back to Hiroshima to see the flagpole and the UNESCO flag flying there. I want to go to Housesteads and see the UNESCO flag flying at Housesteads with an interpretation panel explaining what UNESCO is and why it's important and what you can do as a visitor about a contribution to that global element of peace. This, so far, in my travels, is the best and closest that we have got to that message. I have seen nothing else anywhere in the world that comes close to it. Everybody's clamouring to get World Heritage status. Everybody wants something from UNESCO. My increasingly repeated mantra, World Heritage Sites shouldn't ask what UNESCO can do for them, but what they can do for UNESCO. No World Heritage Site, to my knowledge, actually does that in a clear, concise, regulated, managed way.